You ever notice how easily people get triggered nowadays? A glance, a word, a comment online, boom. Emotional explosion. They lose their temper, their peace, their control, all in seconds. And we normalize it. We say, well, I had to say something. I had to defend myself. I had to respond. No, you didn't. See, the real power doesn't come from reacting. It comes from mastering the space between the stimulus and your response. That's the moment where you either give your power away or you reclaim it. And most people never even realize that moment exists. The truth is, emotional mastery is the greatest form of self-defense. When you can stay calm in chaos, composed in conflict, and grounded in disrespect, you're not weak. You're untouchable. That doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. It means you regulate them. You become the observer, not the reactor. And when you reach that level, other people can throw whatever they want at you, but they can't touch you. Because their words bounce off a person who has nothing to prove. Think about how many arguments you've seen escalate simply because someone had to respond. They had to clap back, they had to win, they had to make a point. But at what cost? Their peace, their focus, their dignity. And for what? A moment of ego satisfaction, but ego is short-term. Emotional discipline, though, that's legacy level strength. That's the kind of power that builds your reputation in silence. It's not about being passive. It's about being precise. And most importantly, it's about being in control of yourself, not trying to control others. Now let's get real. This doesn't come naturally. We're hardwired for fight or flight. When someone disrespects you, your nervous system reacts before your mind can process. Your heart races, your jaw tightens. You want to respond. You want justice. That's human. But if you live there, if you act out of that space, you stay stuck in a survival loop. You never rise above it. And people who live in survival mode never thrive. They just react. They just defend. They just survive. Mastery starts with self-awareness. You have to be able to recognize when you're being triggered and pause. That pause is your power. That pause is the difference between you running the day and the day running you. You can't control how people treat you, but you can absolutely control how long you let their actions live in your mind. You don't have to carry someone else's immaturity. You don't have to respond to ignorance. You don't have to match energy. That's a trap. You have to raise the standard. This is where the philosophy comes in. Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, they taught that no man can harm you unless you allow it. Harm doesn't come from the act. It comes from how you interpret it. That's not denial. That's mental discipline. That's choosing your frame instead of inheriting someone else's chaos. And when you operate from that place, you stop being so easily moved. You start realizing that silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Because the truth is, not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment needs a response. And not everyone is worth your peace. People will bait you. They will push buttons you didn't even know you had. But when you understand that you are responsible for your reaction, they lose their power. The insult doesn't land. The disrespect doesn't break you, because you've built something stronger inside, a discipline that no one can see, but everyone can feel. You ever meet someone who's just grounded, unshaken, centered? No matter what happens around them, they don't flinch. That's not luck. That's trained behavior. They've mastered the pause. They've trained their nervous system to respond with presence, not panic. And that's what makes them powerful. They're not controlled by emotion, but they're not numb either. They just know how to respond, not out of impulse, but out of intention. That's where the shift happens. When your response is intentional, not emotional, you step into leadership of yourself first and then of others. Because people follow calm. They trust grounded energy. They feel safe around people who don't need to prove anything. And when you show up like that, at work, in your relationships, in life, you change the room. You no longer need to dominate. You influence through your presence. Let me say this. Emotional control doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. This isn't about silence as submission. It's about silence as strategy. Sometimes the best response is to say nothing and let your actions speak. Sometimes it's to set a boundary calmly without drama, and sometimes it's to walk away entirely, not because you're weak, but because you know your worth. And when you know your worth, you stop negotiating with disrespect. So the next time someone tries to push your buttons, ask yourself, are they controlling me? Or am I choosing me? Because the second you take the bait, you hand them the keys. And you were never meant to give away that kind of power. Here's what it all comes down to, they can't touch you when you master how you respond. That's the weapon they can't predict. That's the shield they can't penetrate. That's the version of you that intimidates without saying a word, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. You know who you are. You know what you allow, and you know what's beneath you. Master your response, and you master your reality. Let them play games. You're playing for peace. You want to know what really makes you untouchable. It's not dominance. It's not a louder voice. It's not how many people agree with you or applaud when you speak. It's this, when you validate yourself internally. When you no longer need applause to feel confident or silence to feel rejected. Because the truth is, most people walk around waiting for someone else to tell them they matter. They're on a loop, constantly checking for approval, constantly adjusting themselves to be liked. And it's exhausting. Worse, it's dangerous. Because the moment your value is placed in someone else's hands, they can drop it whenever they feel like it. That's where most people get stuck. They confuse being accepted with being worthy. But let me be clear, acceptance is external, worth is internal. When you root your value in how others see you, you become a hostage to perception. You start chasing compliments and avoiding criticism. And in that chase, you lose the most important voice, your own. Your self-esteem becomes a mirror, only as strong as the reflection others give you. That's not confidence. That's dependency dressed up as self-love. This is where real power comes in. When you validate yourself, when you know who you are and what you bring to the table, you stop asking the room to confirm it for you. That doesn't mean you don't listen to feedback. It doesn't mean you ignore wisdom or shut yourself off. What it means is that you don't let every opinion decide your direction. You don't shrink when someone doesn't understand you. You don't swell when someone praises you, because your identity doesn't shift with the temperature of the room. Psychologically, this is what we call internal locus of control. It's the belief that your outcomes, your emotions, your life are shaped by you, not by what someone else thinks of you, not by how someone else treats you. And that's rare, because we're raised in systems that reward external validation, gold stars, likes, grades, promotions, follower counts. And before we know it, we're addicted to being told we're enough. Instead of believing we are, even when no one's clapping. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you affirmed yourself without needing proof? When was the last time you said, I'm proud of how I handled that, without someone else telling you first? That's the shift. When you master that, when you can look at yourself and say, I'm solid, I'm enough. I'm not perfect, but I know who I am. That's when the game changes. Because now, when someone disrespects you, it stings, but it doesn't sink you. When someone compliments you, it's nice, but it doesn't define you. There's a phrase I love, you're not for everyone, and that's your power. The people who truly see you don't need a performance. They resonate with your core, not your mask. But when you're stuck chasing approval, you live in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of standing alone. And fear makes people small. But here's the paradox. The more you shrink for approval, the less people respect you. Because real respect is attracted to self-certainty, not self-doubt. You want to know why most people feel anxious walking into a room? It's not because the room is threatening. It's because they haven't anchored their value before walking in. They're scanning for signs. Am I liked? Am I accepted? Am I enough here? And that creates insecurity. But when you validate yourself first, You walk into the room with value, not looking for it. You stop trying to impress and you start expressing. You're no longer trying to earn a seat at the table. You realize you bring something to the table. And let's be honest, not everyone will appreciate what you bring. That's okay. Not everyone has the taste to value what's rare. Some people won't like you, no matter what you do. Some people won't respect you, no matter how kind, capable, or consistent you are. And that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their lens. You're not here to convince them. You're here to be you, fully and firmly. And when you operate from that space, you become magnetic, because people are drawn to those who are deeply rooted in who they are. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It takes work. It takes solitude. It takes sitting with yourself long enough to know the sound of your own truth. You have to do the inner inventory. You have to ask, what do I value? What do I believe about myself when no one's around? What standards do I set for how I'm treated? Not based on how others behave, but based on what I believe I deserve. That kind of clarity doesn't come from noise. It comes from self-respect. It comes from self-auditing. It comes from being willing to stand alone rather than beg to belong. And here's the reward. When you master this, your emotional state becomes consistent. You stop being yanked around by people's moods or opinions. Someone praises you. You say thank you, but your self-worth was already intact. Someone criticizes you unfairly. You might feel it, but you don't spiral because you've separated your identity from their perception. You've stopped renting space in your soul to people who haven't even earned the right to speak into your life. This kind of internal validation is what creates emotional independence. And emotional independence is what sets you free. Free from needing permission to be proud. Free from changing yourself just to fit in. Free from being afraid to say no. And when you're free like that, really free, the world feels it. People may not always understand you, but they respect you. Because your energy says, I know who I am, and I don't need you to agree with it for it to be true. So let me leave you with this side. When you validate yourself, you stop performing and start living. You stop surviving on scraps of approval and start feeding yourself from within. That's the kind of confidence they can't touch. That's the kind of peace that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't flinch. And when you walk through life like that, whole, not hollow, nothing they say can shake you, and nothing they do can break you. Be so rooted in who you are that their applause can't inflate you, and their silence can't deflate you. You want to know what really frees you? It's not controlling every situation. It's not fixing every misunderstanding or defending every rumor. It's this, letting go of the need to control what's not yours to carry. The truth is, most people spend their energy trying to manage other people's behavior, reactions, perceptions. They want to be understood by everyone, liked by everyone, respected by everyone. But here's the catch: the more you try to control how you're seen, the more you lose sight of who you are. And that's the trap. The need to win every battle. The need to explain yourself every time someone questions you. The need to correct people who don't even care to understand you. That's not strength. That's insecurity dressed up as control. And it's a silent form of suffering, because when you're constantly trying to manage people's opinions or force outcomes, your peace is held hostage by things you don't control. Detachment is not about not caring. It's not coldness. It's clarity. It's knowing what is yours to hold and what is not. It's knowing where your power starts and where it ends. When someone says something that isn't true, you don't have to panic and clear your name everywhere. When someone disrespects you, you don't need to spend hours plotting your response. That's ego. That's your inner child saying, please see me, please get me. But your higher self knows better. Your higher self says, I don't need to control how they see me. I need to stay aligned with who I am. Let's be honest, sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Silence, stillness, walking away. Not because you're weak, but because you know what's worth your energy. When you've mastered detachment, You don't attend every argument you're invited to. You don't chase closure from people who benefit from your confusion. And you stop making everyone else's behavior your responsibility. You focus on what you can control: your attitude, your discipline, your actions, your alignment. We live in a world that celebrates control. Control your image, control your brand, control your relationships, control your narrative. But real strength is surrendering the illusion of control and trusting the power of your character. It's trusting that truth doesn't need to be shouted. It's trusting that peace doesn't require permission. And it's trusting that time will expose what you don't need to explain. Philosophically, this goes back to something the Stoics taught, that freedom is found not in controlling events, but in controlling your response to them. When you're always reacting, always intervening, always trying to manage the outcome, you live in resistance, and resistance breeds anxiety. But when you practice detachment, you begin to understand this. Not everything that happens is about you, and not everything needs a response from you. That shift in thinking changes everything. Because now, when conflict arises, you can choose presence over panic. You can choose stillness over strategy. You can say, that's theirs, not mine. And that's hard. It's hard not to step in and fix. It's hard not to be understood. But peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being okay even when you're misunderstood. And that requires detachment. That requires emotional maturity. That requires self-trust. There's a kind of quiet power in watching something fall apart without falling apart with it. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've outgrown the belief that your peace depends on anything outside of you. It means you trust the process enough to let what's false collapse. You don't chase it. You don't force it. You just stand in truth and let the rest sort itself out. This also applies to people. Not everyone's going to stay. Not everyone's going to understand your growth. And if you try to force alignment, you'll stretch yourself thin. When you're attached to controlling how people stay in your life, you miss the wisdom of release. Some exits are not betrayals, they're blessings. And the sooner you detach from needing everyone to walk with you, the faster you start walking in purpose. You start realizing that not everyone is meant to be on the journey, and that's okay. You stop asking, why did they leave? And start asking, what did I learn? That's detachment. That's growth. That's the emotional upgrade that lets you breathe easier, sleep better, and live freer. Because you're not holding on to what's trying to let go. You're not dragging dead weight into your future. You're not explaining your value to people committed to misunderstanding you. And don't get me wrong, detachment doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean you don't care about people or connection. It means you love without controlling, you give without needing, and you walk away without guilt when peace requires it. You recognize that your well-being is your responsibility, not a negotiation. So the next time you feel the urge to fix, to chase, to prove, to control, pause. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry, or am I trying to manage something that doesn't belong to me? Because sometimes the most radical form of self-respect is simply choosing not to engage, not because you're passive, because you're powerful enough to let go. And here's the thing, when you master detachment, you don't lose your compassion, you sharpen it, you see more clearly, you give more wisely, you protect your peace not out of fear, but out of deep respect for yourself. That's a whole different level of power. The kind that doesn't seek to dominate, but refuses to be dominated. The kind that's not loud, but undeniable. The kind they can't shake, because you're no longer anchored in their chaos. So if you're wondering what makes you truly untouchable, it's not how well you can fight back, it's how deeply you can let go. It's knowing that walking away is not quitting, it's choosing yourself. That silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And that peace doesn't come from control, it comes from clarity. The battles you don't fight say just as much about you as the ones you do. So choose wisely, detach gracefully, and protect your peace like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, It does,